All right, let's get started. How you doing,
Excellent.
Marnie?
Good. How are you?
I am doing awesome. I was going to say it's Friday, but it's Thursday.
It's,
It's
it's Friday for me because
off.
I'm off tomorrow to go to my daughter's college graduation. So I'll take it as a Friday.
There you go. I would like it to be Friday too, but one more day. We're so close. So close.
So close.
So
Yeah.
close.
It's Friday Eve.
Exactly. So, everybody, thank you for being here. We have our event, the QBR Maturity Assessment. And of course, we've got our good friend, Marnie Stockman, the CEO of Lifecycle Insights. And I appreciate you being here and sharing your time, talent, and just all your knowledge and expertise.
I want to say thanks for having me. And Carrie, I was thinking the same thing. It's the Carrie trifecta. We've been on 3 webinars 3 days in a row together.
Oh, that's awesome. That is so cool. Carrie's a good guy. Good to see you here, Carrie. You know what I'm going to do is while we're getting started, I'm going to throw out a couple poll questions. So the first poll question I'm going to throw out, and this just will help us just with the whole webinar process. First poll question is going to be, how do you build out your QBR documentation? And 3 answers for that one. I don't, manually or comprehensive tools in the app.
Spoiler alert, I see a couple of life cyclers in the audience, so I feel like they can respond comprehensive tools app.
Exactly. Yep. So actually we see them responding now.
Yeah,
That's
we
awesome.
sure do. Yeah, that's excellent.
And we'll just give it a few more seconds here, and then we'll launch our second poll question. And we've got lots to cover today. If you have questions throughout the process, throughout the webinar, please feel free to throw them into Q&A or the chat. We've been more than happy to answer those for you. And we want to answer them for you because we're here for you to be able to help you with any questions that you have. And yes, responses are anonymous. Yes. So good question.
I was just saying I could see who was in the room, Norm, and I know some of them are life cyclers, so that's how
There you
I
go.
was just guessing they were the ones answering that way.
Right.
See who was actually answering that way.
So I'm going to go ahead and end this poll right now, and I'm going to throw up our other poll. And our second poll that we have today is, do you have a process for your QBRs? And the answers we have available are nope. Gotta love that, right?
No process.
And,
I talk to a lot of people about their business reviews, and I sometimes do hear nope.
yeah, and that's okay. I mean, it's a evolutionary process, right? I mean, we're all evolving, we're all building on our businesses, working to make it better. And so if you don't have something, that's fine. That's what we're here to talk about. The other options are ad hoc, some clients, all clients, or true QBR. And
so I will tell you the most popular response here that we're getting is ad hoc, and that is the one that I hear most often. And the last question, it was relatively split. There was about 40% on the top 2. They have a process or it's manually done. It's interesting that this follows with what, we have 700 plus partners that we talk to regularly. And in talking to all of them before they started working with us, this is about what we would typically see. A lot of folks in the ad hoc, I always said QBRs are like the weather, right? Everybody talks about it and nobody's doing anything about it 3 years ago when we first started. And right. Folks are moving the needle from ad hoc to improving their process. And that really was why we wanted to talk about the maturity of QBRs, because regardless of where you are, quite literally, regardless of which of those answers you made, I hope folks will walk away with one thing they can do to move the needle on their process.
Absolutely. And so there's our results for the second question we have, and 40% are ad hoc. And the second category there, the second top answer is true QBR. And then the other one, let me share the results on that for everybody. In Marnie, as you mentioned, we're about 39% manually, 39% comprehensive tools and app, and 22% that don't. And so hopefully we'll be able to share with you some great ways to do things differently, improve your process. And I think that's what 2023 is all about. I mean, we're here to reset things, get back to the basics. And it's always great to start the new year fresh. And that's where we're at right now. So let's kick it off, Marnie. And again, if anybody has any questions throughout the process, please let us know.
So I do know many of the names in the chat, but for the folks who don't know me or know of Lifecycle Insights, let me give a little intro and we'll kind of talk through what I think we're aiming to do here, if we can. And I have lost your image, Dan, so I'm now like talking to myself. So I want to I'm gonna fight with Zoom for a second so I can see faces again.
Yeah.
I say I'm going to do that, but maybe I'm not. All right. Well, I'll just run at this without oh, wait, there we are. I was like, I know what's the last trick I didn't try. I found it. All right, good. I'd rather chat with you than just my monitor.
Right.
So, I'm Marnie Stockman, CEO of Lifecycle Insights. I came from the world of ed tech where I ran customer success, and for sure QBRs are how they were the foundation of how we did customer success and frankly, upselling within the ed tech space. So knew a good bit about that and was, the developers and I all came from that world and we're out looking for a problem to solve in a different space. And I ran into Alex Farling, who I played volleyball with for years, and mentioned it to him. And he was an MSP and he said, I spent 16 hours a day, quote unquote, 16. I spent 8 hours a day cobbling together my business review. So how would he have answered these questions? He would have said, I'm doing them manually. And, I'm bringing them together from my PSA, my RMM, my documentation platform, a network detector. And I'm not sure the data is accurate. I'm not sure that it's valuable. And it certainly takes me a long time to format it so that it looks good in a consistent report. So that's how Lifecycle Insights became a thing, right? So over the course of the past 3 years, we've grown from 0 MSPs to 700 plus, and we've watched all of the stages of the QBR process, and we've even grown our product to align with a lot of the process as we talk to our partners. So we've kind of outlined 6 or 7 elements that help to define the maturity of a QBR process and have some questions to ask along the way so that folks can see where they are in the process. Some of the time you're so mired in the details that you don't even think about how to move the needle to the next level. And then we wanted to give some best practices that we talk about regularly to help in moving the needle. So the goal would be, let's check out the maturity. Let's think about some next steps and then imagine what that path could be. This is a great time to have this conversation because with New Year's coming, everybody's creating New Year's resolutions. And if your resolution is on January 1st, I will do all QBRs quarterly for every single client, and they will be perfect. And we will reinvent the whole process on January 1st, and they will be perfect moving forward. I will see you outside the gym that people are no longer going to on January 7th because they're out eating chocolate and having a drink and, no longer working out. It's just not conceivable. So we always talk about it's iterative improvement, right? And what's one thing that you can do to impact your process. So I hope that even folks on the call that are doing true QBRs will hear one thing at least that they can do to move the needle.
Absolutely. And you said a couple of things I just want to comment on. I guess the one main thing is, we've gotten to know each other, over the last almost 3 years now. So at the beginning of the pandemic. And, I just want to say that you guys are truly unique and special when it comes to a type of organization that truly listens to your partners. And I've watched you, evolve, watched your product evolve, and it truly is amazing because, you've got the ear out there listening to what the partners are saying. And you guys make that change. And you can't say that for a lot of vendors, right? And it's not a dig on other vendors. It's just that there are some that, kind of go up and above as far as what that client feedback is, partner feedback. And that's really something that we all want, and something we want to do for our clients as well, right? And part of the QBR process is hearing from our clients and listening to what they're saying, and being able to adapt and adjust what we do and how we deliver our services as well.
So I think it would be fairly critical hypocritical to have a QBR product, right, that focuses on delivering outcomes for your clients and then not listen to our own clients, right, and how to deliver better outcomes for them. So I appreciate those comments. We do work hard to do that. So we don't have a sales team, right? We only focus on driving happy, raving fans that will promote what they need to do, and really have conversations with us. So we have weekly workshops with our partners to talk through what they need so they can deliver better business for their clients. So I appreciate that, because we work very hard to stay engaged with the community, which is sort of brings us to the very first topic of business reviews, and like, are you engaged with your client right out of the gate? But it's not just about engagement. So I've got 2 talking points that I think are important here. So when it comes to engagement, some folks will say, oh yeah, we do a quarterly business review, but we just talk to the project managers on site, right? We don't have the CFO at the table. We don't have the CEO at the table. Or they will say, well, we schedule them every quarter, but sometimes they get canceled or people don't show up, right? And that also lends itself to the cadence piece. Is quarterly appropriate for everyone? When you listen to the folks in the industry to say, okay, we should be delivering $300 per seat or per user. If you truly have all of your clients at $300 per user, they're probably paying you enough to get a true quarterly business review, and you would need to. But the reality of it is your client base is probably more scattered than that, right? And so if they're only paying you $1,500 a month, you and I were talking about this yesterday, are you even still profitable if you go on site for a 3-hour meeting with 3 people, right? Like, they've already spent all of your profit in your man hours heading there. So as folks look, and my thinking is, everyone would kind of think about, okay, am I green or yellow or red in this particular piece? And are there some tips or tricks around engagement or cadence that we might want to change? So my next slide is where we help with both the engagement and the cadence piece. So we call this segmentation. You can see I've got the rating that folks went through at the beginning. So think about where you were there. And I want you to think about the chart here on the right-hand side. And if this is value versus effort or complexity, think about a partner that lands in that top right quadrant, right? High value, high effort. Probably like a Department of Defense, a HIPAA compliance, like somebody that's going to take a lot of work. They're high compliance, but they're paying you good money for that. Think about quadrant B, high value, low effort, probably your favorite client, right? This would be a very profitable client. They buy all of your services. They're aligned to your stack, so they're easy to support. Very happy customers, low effort. Think about lower left, low value, low effort. Now, this might seem like, why would I want a bunch of these? But these might be like a super automated, right? MSPs are masters of automation. So I bet there are ways we can, do the work in that quadrant well. And then let's think about that top left quadrant. High effort, low value, right? So these are the ones that when they call, it brings the morale down on the team. They're not paying you enough, right? They're squeaky wheels. They won't replace their aged assets, so they're causing their own problems, kind of thing.
Yep.
When I do this in workshops and I ask people to put names in each of these buckets, it suddenly starts to become clear of what we need to do to set a cadence to get all of them to participate with you in business reviews the way they would need to. So would love to get your take on kind of each of the quadrants, like, all right, so quarterly, monthly for that high value, high effort client. And what can we do with those tech touch clients in the bottom left quadrant, right? Can we remarket to them quarterly? If you're not talking to your client, somebody else is, right? So what are ways you could market to that client so you're still profitable and making them aware of what you've done for them and what you could do for them that isn't a 3-hour meeting once a quarter face to face.
Right. And you mentioned something about profitability. And that is a key thing that we need to look at, because depending on the size of the client, we could be burning up a lot of time doing a quarterly meeting in which, obviously time is money, both for them and for us. So if, we basically are providing them with, what everybody in the past has always viewed is a data dump of historical data, everything that's happened in the past. Let's kill a few trees to print all these reports, just because they came out of a PSA or an RMM. And then you look at the profitability, that's not really moving the needle anywhere. And, you're burning up a lot of time, not walking out with some concrete, goals and takeaways. And, you've just burned a lot of money. But I think the problem is that we always view things as a one size fits all, that every account, regardless of who they are, they're going to get this, this package. And
Yep.
part of that package is a QBR. And the Q is the key word here, because a Q could be basically X, could be anything. And we really need to define, which we're talking about, what that cadence looks like.
So I say that Q could stand for quality business review, and then you can get off the nagging irritation that you think it needs to be quarterly, right? Some for sure do need it quarterly. But that is one of the things that we think folks really need to concentrate on, because this helps you prioritize. So think about all of the folks that were in the ad hoc bucket, right? So if you're doing them ad hoc, are you doing them for the right people? Are you doing them for the ones that are easy to talk to, right? Or are you doing for the ones that are high value, high effort, can move the needle on your business, and you can move the needle on their business? So to take some time to build this graph out, right? It's a big plus in the middle of your paper, right? It's not a high effort activity here.
Right.
You should really start taking a look and then say, are there folks that are making patterns in here? Like if I look in that D segment, low value, high effort, what if I found that those were all of my contractors that were there, or all of my lawyers that were there, right? So that's not my ideal client profile. I'm not supporting any of them well, and they're not good customers for me. What if all of the lawyers are in my bottom right quadrant, high value, low effort? Go market to more lawyers then, right? Or whoever's in this particular quadrant.
Right.
I've talked to a lot of partners about, do you have a process in place to ask for a referral in quadrant B? Your most profitable, high value, low effort clients. I've seen 2 different strategies. One could be, hey, Dan, we love working with your company, right? You're a great size for us. We feel like our conversations really drive value for your business, and would love to work with more folks like you. Do you know other folks in your area, your chamber of commerce, your, X, Y, or Z, that might be a good fit for us? Would you be willing to introduce them to us? Or the reverse, which is probably even more powerful. Dan, we've worked together for 3 years. I super appreciate working with you. I think what you're doing to drive your business is really strong. What would be a good referral for you? I would love to be able to refer someone to your business. Right. What would an ideal client look like for you? Because for sure, when I offer you that, I suspect you're thinking, oh, I wonder what would be a good referral for them too, right?
Yeah. And the key there too is being fair and equal with that. Because often, we want more out of it, maybe than what they want out of it, right? So we're putting in a lot more effort to help them, and they're putting in no effort, or vice versa. And it really needs to be, a
relationship.
A balance. Yeah.
So it's funny you say that, because that kind of leads right to the next thing, is what are you talking about at the business review, right? So what is your agenda all about you, or is it collaborative, right? They get to have input in the agenda. Is it focused on your customer goals, as opposed to just, look, I sell all these things and I want to sell them to you, And have you sent it in advance to get the right people at the table, right?
Right.
So as folks are thinking through this, I'll tell a bit of what we think the ideal situation then looks like. So the first would be to send an agenda 2 weeks in advance. Doing this says that you have a plan. You're not going to waste their time on patch stats and spam stats and how many viruses we've antivirus, right? We're going to talk about strategic conversation. And so we'll start with that, right? We're going to have a strategic conversation around your goals. More on that in a minute. But would love to hear what else you would like to chat about. So what if they send back, Marnie, I want to chat about ticket 1837. Guess what Marnie probably does not want to chat about? Ticket 1837, right?
Right.
So I'm going to go do my research and say, get my team on ticket 1837 and call you immediately. Dan, you're too valuable of a customer for us to wait 2 weeks to deal with ticket 1837. That did fall through the crack on our ends. I'm sorry, but I have Todd working on that now, and he will have an update for you at the end of the day. I'm not sure it'll get resolved today, right? But we're working through this so that by the time the actual business review comes to play, you're a raving fan. Ticket 1837 is long in the past, and you've already proven to them that they are a valuable customer. The agenda piece is how do we show them that it's going to be focused on their goals? So we mentioned you need to address what the customer's focus is. So as I said, we have Friday weekly workshops with all of our partners. They're recorded online, so folks are happy to go cyber stalk them and check them out. But sometimes we talk about the questions that they use to drive business conversations. And here are some of the ones that our partners ask. How is your business changing over the next 12 to 18 months? Are you planning expansion or adding new locations? Are you downsizing? Are you hiring, adding staffing? What changes are happening in your industry, right? Is there commoditization? And what's something you would love technology to do for you? If you look at those questions, those are not questions that the project manager, the point of contact, is really coming to the table to talk about. This says, I need a C-suite conversation, right? To talk about your business so we can help drive conversations. For sure, we're going to talk about risk and security, productivity, et cetera, aligned to your business goals.
Really, it sets the stage, it plants the seed. And first and foremost, when we take a look at the stereotype that many have about technology, they think that we're going to be showing up at the table and talking about blinky lights. And we talked yesterday about, with the holidays coming up, you're going to Christmas parties, New Year's Eve parties, whatever the case may be. And you're all sitting around and everybody's just kind of like just looking at each other and maybe doing a little bit of talking. But then somebody asks you a question about something that really interests you. And then all of a sudden, your level of engagement just completely changed. And then there's this conversation, and others are starting to get into things that matter to them. And for the business owners to show up to the table, it needs to be about what's helping to drive their business forward. They're not going to show up if they know that, ticket 1837 is on the agenda. Yeah. And I want to tell you about how great our firewall is and all the things that it's done to, that's just going to, they're going to be disengaged. They don't want to show up. And that's why they don't show up to the table.
Yeah, for sure. And I have a recommendation that I'm going to show later about how one of our partners actually drives the technology conversation off of the agenda item. So we'll get to that at the end when I get to the recommendation piece. On the right-hand side, we show other pieces and parts that folks typically bring to the table, but I've got agenda, recommendations, and budgets highlighted. The most mature, remember we're talking about QBR maturity. The most mature business reviews have an agenda that's customer focused. They have recommendations that align to the business goals and are driving a budget forecast for their partners. As a side note, you have to start with the data. You have to have done the assessment component to be able to get there. So if you're at the very beginning, I don't have a process at all, you're going to start with the data piece. And I've got a slide to talk to that. And then I've got a slide to talk to the assessment piece, but know that we're driving to recommendations and budgets. But The same way we're going to eat an elephant is how we're going to do a business review. And that's one bite at a time. So
Right.
what data are we bringing to the table? And if you are cobbling this together, you're spending a lot of time getting accurate data to the table where this should be automated. Every cybersecurity framework, every one of them asks about asset inventories and user inventories. So how are you getting an accurate information of what assets are expired, are under warranty, have expired operating systems, can't be patched, can't be secured, et cetera. And with users, how are you tracking who has MFA turned on, what their, Microsoft Secure Score, et cetera. So how is this being done? So folks on, that are scoring themselves, are you doing this manually or not providing it at all? Or do you have automation? So this is always live, and maybe even a place where folks can log in and just see it for themselves or get an email delivered to their inbox.
When we were talking about profitability, I mean, we were talking about burning up time, face to face. We weren't even getting to the whole prep time, and that's where automation is critical.
So when we first started talking with beta partners around Lifecycle, we were querying everybody. How many hours is it taking you to prep a QBR? The lowest end was 3 or 4. The highest end was 12 to 24 hours to prep. So if you think about every client, let's just take the small end of it. Let's take 3. If you did 3 and you did, 3 hours per client times 10 clients a month, right? So that's 30 and a quarter. That's 3 times 30. That's 900 hours. That's 90 hours. Sorry. 3 times 30, 90 hours that we're saving already. So that's 2 weeks of an FTE that you're spending, on a business review. That automation is one of the things. These are screenshots from Lifecycle. That is some of the automation that we have, where you can say, like, here, who's not in your ConnectWise, that is in Microsoft and doesn't have MFA turned on, et cetera, or their cybersecurity phishing training, which reports, which assets have expired. So to save that time, what are you doing? The next piece is, and that's really the data as opposed to what you and I talked about earlier. It's not patch stats. It's not spam stats. That's kind of baseline. That's commoditized at this point. My computer woke up this morning and told me it patched itself. So if you're going to come talk to me for 3 hours about how you patched it, I'm a little concerned what you're doing, Dan, because my computer already let me know. So when it comes to technology and security risk, this is the conversation everyone's having now, right?
And the other thing just to point out too is, truly understanding the value of time. One little exercise: set a recurring 5-minute timer, and you'll be amazed on how quick 5 minutes goes by. Right? I think when we're working, we're just moving along. But when you hear that 5 minutes, and then you hit snooze for 5 more minutes, and it keeps going off and off and off, you would just be amazed on how much time how it goes by so quickly. And the value of our time and the value of the client's time is just critical, so that's my little exercise story there.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of exercise, go ahead. If you want that 5 minutes to feel like a long time, just do some exercise while you're in that 5 minutes.
Exactly.
That can slow time right down to a crawl for you, for sure.
Absolutely.
So for the assessment piece, developing a cadence for the assessment is really the crux of the business review, right? Because this is how you're going to determine what needs there are in terms of risk, or in terms of ways you can implement remediation plans to address their environment needs. And then when you've built that assessment, are you sending them 700 pages of documentation that they don't understand? Or I think it's pretty clear when I look at this. I don't know what else half those words mean, but surely I don't like that red 33% at the bottom, right? I think it's very clear that in general, things are not a nightmare, but I've got an issue there. And then how are you showing them what you could do to move the needle for them? on this, right? So a lot of our partners do an assessment for a prospect around the same categories: hardware, software, business applications, et cetera, policies and procedures and security, and say, we've looked at your environment, and we feel like based on our best practices, you're at a 17%. We would make these recommendations to move the needle, which would get you to the 85%. And
Right.
we have a lot of folks that tell us they previously struggled to show the ROI because they were talking about, like you said, blinky lights and flux capacitors and gadgets instead of moving the needle on things that folks understand, which is, security around their environment, et cetera. So I see a question. Yes, this is so Eric asked if this was related to ScalePad or Warranty Master. We do our own warranty lookups, Eric, on Dell, Lenovo, HP, Microsoft Surface, Cisco, Meraki, and SmartNet. So we grab that information and put it into Lifecycle with direct integrations to the PSA and then those warranty lookups. I hope that makes sense. All right, so Dan, thoughts on budgets, things you hear. You talk to folks every week around what they're delivering clients to budgets, and we do too. We have partners that say they're not delivering budgets at all. They're only delivering budgets around their managed services, so the assets that they're replacing, or full collaboration ones.
Yeah, and I hear a lot about we'll call it a lot of complaints about how clients have no budget when it comes to technology, but they have budgets around everything else. And my response to that is always, we need to help them with that. We need to help them, and it needs to look at from a comprehensive perspective, not just things that you just mentioned that you are impacting, because at the end of the day, they might be spending money on things that they're not aware of, that are either redundant, and they've already got another solution in place that can do the same thing, and they're paying a lot of extra money, or there might just be areas in which that there could be some other cost savings. And when it comes time for cutting things, if they need to cut back, we don't want it to be cutting back things that we deliver, right? So if we're helping them as a true partner, instead of it being a client-vendor relationship, we truly are their partner and working together with them. We're a member of their team. We just really need to help them go beyond just a hardware rotation plan that might say, this is where your expiration dates look like. This is the estimated replacement time, the estimated replacement cost. We want to look at everything that's technology related and help them with that, because we are the experts in that area. And a lot of times I think they stay away from developing a budget because they're not familiar enough, and they're because everybody's like, oh, technology, and there's this fear that I can't put something together because I don't understand it.
Well, there's fear of the unknown. They don't even have the information to build their own budget, right? They're not tracking their assets end of life, right? So it's interesting. I wrote down a couple of things. Even when folks are paying for managed services, they still think as having a break fix mentality, because they assume every time they talk to their managed service provider, they're going to be surprised with a new expense. If you give them a budget forecast that projects out 3 to 5 years, you're taking the surprise element out of it. Now they're thinking, oh, I can actually plan for this, right? That's shifting from the break fix mentality, I'm just going to pay for a new one when it happens, to, oh, it's not going to break because we've got an asset refresh plan in place, right? And their whole focus is to keep us up and running, right? So sustainable at all times. You mentioned the redundancy piece. One of our partners has started, so we automate the budget forecast, and you can include manual contracts as well as your recommendations. So one of our partners has started doing a full QBR as their prospecting tool. And so they asked one particular prospect if they could have access to all of their contracts so that he could see if there was any way he could find some redundancies. Oh, and redundancies he found. So what he found was that they had multiple locations, and at the outset of COVID, they had each location had gone and purchased a different VoIP provider. And so they had 17 different VoIP contracts. So he was able to save them $3,000 a month MRR, right, on their VoIP provider. He's friends with Ray. So he's a OIT fan. So he was able to move him to the VoIP service that he, has a relationship with. And he is now invited to that table every month as a part of the folks looking at the bigger, right? He was taking a business look at their business to drive that conversation. When they realized that their line of business application, right, and all of their cybersecurity insurance, all of these things, printer copier services, phone services, ISP providers, on top of their assets and their managed service agreement, their technology budget, they find, is in fact what is running their business, right? And so if you can be a part of that, technology doesn't become apart from your business. It's just a part of the business. And I think that's the point that makes the power behind the budget be truly strategic and get you a seat at the table. Because to your point, your clients can't build this budget because they don't know when they should replace that server. And it hadn't occurred to them that maybe they can get rid of a capital expense and move to an operating expense if they move to the cloud. Right? They're not sitting around thinking about that, but you are as an MSP. So how can we have that conversation?
Yeah. And like you said, you will continue to have that seat at the table, because the last thing we want is our clients to think, when they see our face, they see us, on caller ID, if the first two things they think about is, Dan's calling me because either there's a problem,
something's broken,
or he wants me to spend some more money, right? If those are the two things that's keeping them from wanting to pick up that phone when you're calling, then we have a problem. We want them to truly, saving them $3,000. You said $3,000 a month, right? It's huge. That is huge, and you've truly earned your seat at the table. And the decision makers, the people you want there, will show up too, because you're having then a business owner to business owner discussion, or a business leader to business leader discussion. And, and when you have that level of rapport, you will sell the stuff. You will get what you want. Walk away with some more projects, and walking away with approvals on, pulling the trigger on some new hardware rotation. Maybe they accelerate stuff. Maybe because they're saving $3,000 a month, that they say, you know what, all these workstations we're going to replace in fourth quarter, let's do it now. And much better than to make a decision to spend it with you now versus them spending it elsewhere on something that doesn't really drive the
business. Absolutely. So we're asked in the chat, what % of our clients are charging for the assessment, asset management, and budgeting as part of a VCIO engagement, as opposed to including it in the basic MSP services? So we have, I would say, 3 different groups of folks. One of which is folks that say that as part of the prospecting, will charge for the assessment. This is the folks that charge for it. They put a charge on the actual cost of the assessment, but then discount that for some of the onboarding costs if they become a client for that MSP. So you're going to pay for the assessment. We're going to build out the recommendations. If you come and work with us, we'll discount the cost of that assessment. So I would say, I'm going to guess 25%. It might be much larger than that. But I would think about that many charge for that in that regard, right, as part of prospecting. I see I see a good number that charge for a VCIO engagement, as opposed to, for when you say if it's included in basic MSP services, it almost goes back to the seat price conversation Dan and I had. For folks that are paying $300 a seat, it's typically included in that because it's a much higher seat price, as opposed to if they've got somebody, at $100 a seat, they do something to help recover some of that cost. That's kind of what I see. Dan, how about you?
Yeah, I see the same thing. I think I do see most, in that pre-sales process, a lot of times it's just being thrown in my opinion, not always the best plan of attack. Sometimes you think it is, oh, it's my investment into trying to close this deal. But the time that you're providing is truly valuable to that client. And when it is just given away, it diminishes the overall value of that. But for the normal, VCIO type of assessments and, discussions, I guess it depends on what you are charging. My opinion would be you would always want it to be included because you want it to always be part of the process. You don't want them to opt out of something that's so critical in helping them drive their business forward. And so those are my 2 cents on it from that angle.
And I think that is what we hear too. I think the ultimate, if you're trying to mature it, right? The growing it into your package makes sense because they can't line item it out. And that's really your strategic opportunity to chat with them. I'm just giving an example of kind of our partners again show like a 12-month line item, every asset that's going to be replaced budget, as well as a 3 or 5 year budget to help the conversation exactly that we just had. We don't have a general template to share with customers on how to charge for the assessment. We have assessment templates, but we don't have a pricing model for that. How about you, Dan?
Let me just reread this here. General template to share on how you would charge for the assessment. No, I don't have something with that. I guess it depends on the angle you're taking. I mean, when you're developing your pricing model, it comes down to, charging the right amount, because in order to deliver these type of services and deliver a QBR, regardless of the cadence, it does take time. Even if you have all the best tools in place, it does take time. And you want to make sure that you are recouping some of those costs. So a lot of times when we look at our overall stack, we're looking at all the hard costs that come from our vendors. But we have to make sure that we're not ignoring all those other costs, like our time, because it takes us time to develop quotes. It takes us time to build out the hardware rotation plan. We need to incorporate enough money in there for that. But I don't have any kind of a template, unfortunately.
Yeah, same. Like I said, we've got the assessment piece, but the charging we see, international, all kinds of ranges for sure. So the last piece is really around the recommendation component. So this is, are you building recommendations aligned to those risk assessments and also aligned to their business outcomes and technology? And I mentioned when we were talking about business goals at the agenda that I had one of our partners examples. So I wrote a book called the MSP Handbook with Juan Fernandez, the QBR edition, and Trisha gave us this as an example that we could use in the book. So this is one of the agenda items, 2 of the agenda items from Trisha's QBR. And if you look at the leftmost column, her clients' strategic goals are to continue to grow through acquisition and revitalize the organization with a new brand. From there, Trisha develops aligned technology goals, right? So these are going to turn to projects, right? And they are develop a playbook for gathering information required for technology and service integration, define a technology and security standard for new acquisitions to determine a clearer path to necessary infrastructure changes. And then for the revitalize the organization with a new brand, plan for underlying technology changes to email, Active Directory, internal applications, and website. So when I look at these, and I wasn't an MSP and I don't pretend to play one on TV, I can see what projects she's going to build as a recommendation to align to this. So Dan, agree with me or disagree?
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I just wanted to enable chat here. I just got a message that chat was disabled. So I wanted to make sure that I correct that real quick, and I apologize about that. I'm sorry. Let me
Nope,
go
no
back.
worries. So I will go back. So as we look at the client's strategic goals, right? And Trisha develops these technology goals for her clients. When I read the technology goal, define a technology and security standard for new acquisitions to determine a clearer path to necessary infrastructure changes. She has basically said, in order to accomplish your goal of growing through acquisition, we've developed best practices for your company around technology standards, right? Which means that every time you acquire, we are going to rip and replace and implement our best practices. So in my mind, that is, she has already been pre-approved for every rip and replace project for every acquisition moving forward, right? She has set her company up well for moving forward with a very sticky client. But it is because the company wants to continue to grow through acquisition, and she has shown them how the technology can help them make that acquisition successful. So it's all driving back to the company's strategic goal. Like you said at the beginning, you're at a Christmas party and it's a lot of wah.
Yeah.
Until someone says, hey, Dan, what are you doing for New Year's Eve, right? And like, oh, you want to talk about me for a bit? That's how the business owners are feeling, right?
Yeah.
So then when you're bringing recommendations to the forefront to have that conversation, they're much more inclined to talk about, oh, I do want to make that happen, right? How and where and when can I make that happen?
Yeah. And, when you take a look at those two goals that Trisha had on there, if the question, when you see those, is what does this have to do with technology? That's where we need to really take a step back and understand that, for the clients, technology isn't their business, but technology is a tool that helps them deliver their products or services, helps them achieve their goals and objectives. So if one of their goals or objectives is, the ability to grow their business through acquisition, there are different technology components that help with it. There are many technology components that help with that. And so we really need to be more and more comfortable with those type of discussions that are outside of technology. It might feel uneasy at first that we're in there talking about their business and what are they trying to achieve, but that's okay. You will become more accustomed to it. You will become better at delivering that and asking those questions. Because again, business owner to business owner, business leader to business leader, we want to have that rapport with them. And so if the objectives that are bringing to the table are only technology related, then we need to have a reset, take a step back, and help them to understand that we're looking at their business as a whole.
So a great resource for that is a book by Patrick Lencioni, and you have to remember the author because when you Google it, you're going to want to have it. It's called Getting Naked. And it is about, again, it's Getting Naked by Patrick Lencioni. And that book is all about how to consult when you're not an expert in their business. By golly, frankly, I don't want you to be better at dentistry than my dentist, right? So you don't have to be a dentist in order to help them drive better business at the dentist's office, right? So 2 weeks ago, I went to the dentist. We work with a lot of MSPs that work with a lot of dentists. So I hear the line of business application, Dentrix, a lot.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm thinking about this as they've got their hands all crammed in my mouth. And I didn't really come up with a good time to throw in Dentrix, right? But when I stood up, they'd taken the apron off me. I looked down at their monitor and it doesn't say Dentrix. And so I'm a talker. I got to bring it up. So I said, hey, I work with managed service providers who work with a lot of dentists. And I'll be honest, I expected to see Dentrix on your screen. And he said, oh, no.
Yeah.
Let me tell you. So we live in a small town. So he asked me if I knew the managed service provider. I did. He said, well, he's got me all set up. Remember how you used to have that pink goo for impressions shoved in your mouth? I'm well aware. He said, well, anyway, this new application he's got for me, this is connected. Now he's given me a tour of his office. He drags me around. We're connected to the network over here. This machine does this. He brings me out in the hallway. It's connected to here. So now we don't have to do any of that, right? So he is super jazzed about telling me how technology is making my life as the patient easier because I'm not going to have pink goo shoved into the roof of my mouth anymore. So his managed service provider has done a bang up job of business reviews because my dentist is excited to talk to him every month because he's driving better business. He's not just trying to get by as a functional dentist office. He's trying to be the gold standard in our town, right? That people know you are going to get better, happier results from my dentist because of the technology they have. So he's pretty, I mean, his face lit up when he had the opportunity to talk about his technology provider. And that book that I just mentioned talks about how you can have that conversation and eliminate the fear of feeling like you're going to feel stupid because you don't know how to talk about dentistry with them. They do. They're super passionate about it, right? So I highly recommend that as a resource for how to drive that recommendation conversation when you're like, I don't actually know much about dentistry at all.
Right. And, conceptually, right? We need to understand it conceptually.
Of course.
Just like clients try to understand technology conceptually.
Conceptually, correct.
Yeah. So, and I just keep thinking about raving fans. I mean, when you talked about, his reaction and how excited he was, and that is a raving fan, right? It's somebody that is well beyond satisfied with the level of service you're providing. You've exceeded expectations, and the key is consistency with that. And that's awesome. There's nothing greater than to have a client that when it comes to technology, that they don't think about it as a root canal.
No. It was the polishing. It was the shiny stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
I love stories like that.
Yeah, I thought that was a very fun one. I just thought it was ironic that that he was just as enthusiastic to talk about it as I was. Yeah. So this is the last question. And I think, frankly, it's the most important one, especially as we go into the new year. And that is, are you and your team committed to delivering quality business reviews, right? The number one thing that keeps people from being better business reviews is the status quo. Yeah. They get a sense of overwhelm that they do have to do all these things when in fact you just need to move the needle one bit at a time, right? But you have to commit to doing that. Otherwise, you will just fall back into the same old routine, which is probably not a routine at all, judging from the number of ad hoc responses we got, right? So are you committed to doing one new thing better? And what's that one new thing for you? Like I said, regardless of where you are on the spectrum, I hope, would love to hear if folks agree that, there's something that they can bring to the table that they hadn't thought about before in business reviews.
Yeah. And, one thing that we talked about yesterday is just that attitudes are contagious. We want to, it's not like we're going to walk in there and do somersaults and yada, yada, yada. But,
but I do like a cartwheel. So,
yeah. I mean, we have to, we got to be present, and we've got to get excited about their business, because if we want their attention, then we need to get excited about their business and be genuine about it. Because if that is the least of your concern, then they're going to be disengaged, and the commitment from them just won't be there. But again, attitudes are contagious, and when you show great interest in their business and why what you're doing will help make their business better, that's where they're going to want to move forward with those things, versus just say, well, they're trying to sell me something that's not going to help me.
Yep. So I have a question in the chat I want to answer. Once signed up, how long do you think it would take to generate your first life cycle driven QBR? So I know Alex is in the audience, and so I'm sure he's already thinking she's going to say it depends, which is exactly right. So, so the technical integration with Lifecycle Insights takes 20 minutes. The next question will be, how good is your data? So we have a 30-day free trial, and we have a path to get you to your first business review in 30 days, where you have data cleanup, you build your assessment, you build your budget, you build your recommendations. We have had partners that have delivered it in under a week. William, the person I talked about who saved their prospect $3,000 a month in MRR, did actually deliver 2 business reviews in his 7-day trial and sold $100,000 worth of projects. Wow. We have other folks that don't do the work, because Dan mentioned it. Even with the tool, you will have some work to do. You have to look at your client's environment and determine where the risks are. You have to decide what makes sense to build what recommendations make sense, and you have to have clean data. So we have some folks that don't get that done, but we have a path for you that in 30 days we've got 4 30-minute pieces of content that help drive the needle. I think is a fair statement if you're committed to do the work.
That's awesome. I don't know if we have any other questions. We do have a couple minutes here. If you do have a question, you want to throw that in, please feel free to do that. And Marnie, you've got some contact information in there.
Yeah. So let me, I'm going to stop sharing so I can just cut and paste this into the chat. If you want to connect, you please do find me on LinkedIn. So I'm putting this in the chat. If you are interested in checking out Lifecycle Insights, we do have, as I mentioned, a free 30-day trial. So I put the link to our pricing page there, which is where you can grab the trial. And next week, I'm actually doing a webinar, a walkthrough demo of Lifecycle Insights. So let me get the link for that. And if folks are interested in a demo of the button clicks, right? Get the idea of what we do, but now I'll show you how it's done. Would love for folks to join me there.
That's awesome. So you do have Marnie's in the chat. We've got Marnie's link to her LinkedIn. We got the link to the pricing page as well.
It kind of cracks me up that I'm sitting here in Zoom as we speak, but when I go to log into my Zoom, it wants me to MFA one more time. So, okay, I will still MFA. Give me just a second. All right. So I'm going to put a link to the invite for the webinar if folks are interested in this. So this is next week, and we always send recordings. So we'll happily, if you want to join that to get a walkthrough of Lifecycle, that should be in the chat now as well. Perfect.
Well, Marnie, I don't think we have any other questions. I think we nailed it. I mean,
perfect.
Yeah, it's always great having you here, listening to the latest of what's happening in the world of QBRs, technology business reviews, whatever you want to call it. But most importantly, it's just a critical aspect of developing our relationships. And I guess the one thing I always like to say is, you can sell without selling. So when you have a tool like this and you're presenting the client with data, you're able to sell without selling, because you're showing them where they're at, where they want to go, and ultimately for them to get from point A to point B, it's going to require some new products or services, most likely. And you're delivering their business outcomes. Yeah, exactly. So again, thank you very much, Marnie. I don't see any other questions. So we will move on. I'm sure everybody has a lot of great things to do in their busy days today. For sure. And wishing everybody happy holidays and safe travels to you, Marnie. Thank you. Heading up to your daughter's graduation.
Yeah, thanks.
And one last thing, everybody, we will be sending out an email that has the replay of today's event. And please feel free to share that with other people in your organization or other MSPs that you hang with. So with that being said, everybody have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Take care.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.